I pulled into the driveway at 11:15 p.m. after a double shift at the distribution center. My back ached. My feet hurt. All I wanted was a hot shower in my bed, but when I walked through the front door, everything changed. I walked into the investment firm where my son-in-law worked. He laughed out loud. "Security, please escort this gentleman out," he said, smirking. He clearly wandered in from the wrong building. He called his colleagues over to watch. He wanted an audience. He wanted my humiliation. Then his managing partner appeared. He glanced at my son-in-law and said, cold as ice, "Mr. Patterson, your $15 million portfolio transfer has been approved. And as for you, clear out your desk." My son-in-law's arrogance turned into career suicide. But that was only the beginning. The November rain hammered my Subaru's windshield as I parked on the street outside Thomas and Rebecca's house in Oakville. His Mercedes GLE sat in the driveway like a throne, still gleaming despite the weather. I had driven from my apartment in Burlington, a modest one-bedroom overlooking the lake. Simple, quiet, everything I needed. Through the front window I saw movement. My grandson Jacob, 8 years old, pressed his face to the glass and waved. His sister Emma, 10, stood beside him. I waved back. Jacob's jacket looked thin for November. Emma's shoes were worn at the toes. Thomas opened the door before I reached it. He stood there in a tailored suit, home from the office, still dressed like he was closing deals. "Robert, you're early. Traffic must have been light." "It was fine," I said, stepping inside and shaking rain from my coat. He reached for my jacket, but his eyes were already scanning my clothes. Jeans, a flannel shirt, work boots I'd owned for 15 years. "Rebecca's still finishing dinner. Why don't you wait in the living room?" The house smelled of roasted chicken and something sharp I couldn't place. Expensive candles, probably. Everything in this house cost more than it needed to. Rebecca appeared from the kitchen, towel in hand. My daughter, 34, looked older somehow, tired around the eyes. "Dad, you made it." She hugged me quickly, then stepped back as Thomas positioned himself beside her. A united front, we sat to dinner. Thomas took the head of the table. The children were quiet and watchful, the way kids are when they've learned to walk on eggshells. Thomas poured himself wine without offering me any. "So, Robert, how's retirement treating you? Must be strange after all those years at the mill." I'd owned and operated Harrison Timber Processing for 42 years. I built it from nothing in 1981. I sold it 18 months ago for $31 million. But Thomas preferred his version of my history. "It suits me," he said. I couldn't do it. A man needs purpose. He spoke of his new Mercedes as if it were a credential. GLE 450, twin-turbo inline-six, 0 to 100 in 5.9 seconds. He looked at my flannel and smiled thinly. Practical. That's the word. Every topic became a referendum on worth and status. When Jacob finally asked about fishing, Thomas cut him off. "Robert doesn't have time for hobbies anymore. Retirement's expensive, right? Fixed income. Have to watch every dollar." Rebecca refilled his glass automatically. She had learned his rhythms. After dinner, I asked to see the children's rooms. Emma's desk had a broken drawer handle held together with tape. Jacob's winter boots had soles separating from the leather. In the master bedroom, I glimpsed a California king with pristine linens, price tag still dangling from the corner. A wasn't $200 tag. The contrast was obvious. "Grandpa, do you like Dad's new car?" Emma asked. "It's very nice, sweetheart," I said. "Dad says we might get new winter coats next month after his bonus." She pulled at her thin jacket. I found Thomas in the living room, scrolling his phone. "Thanks for dinner, Thomas. I'll call next week about visiting." "We're busy people," he said without looking up. "We'll see." The conversation was finished. Back in Burlington, my apartment greeted me familiar and quiet. I made tea and sat at my desk. My banking app loaded slowly. I checked the balance. The number sat there like a weight. I had sold the mill. The buyer paid in cash. No one in my family knew the real number. Rebecca assumed maybe $1 million. Thomas assumed less. They were wrong. I opened a document and typed, "Family Observations, November 2024. Children's clothing. Luxury bedroom purchases. Thomas's spending patterns. Mercedes timing." I saved it to a password-protected folder and went to bed. 3 days later, I sat at my laptop at dawn, coffee gone cold. I had been researching private investigators in the Greater Toronto area since 6 a.m. I narrowed the list to 3. The third one felt right. Dennis Kowalski agreed to meet me at a cafe in Mississauga. He arrived on time, mid-50s, gray hair. Neat, but not expensive. No preamble. "You said this is family-related," he said. "What concerns you specifically?" I explained Thomas's spending, the children's wear, the thin coat. Either he was hiding income or hiding debt. 2 weeks. Full surveillance and background check, Kowalski said. $4,500 cash preferred. I slid an envelope across the table. We shook hands. The days crawled. Kowalski sent brief updates, subject at workplace. Lunch meeting observed. Evening routine monitored. 10 days after hiring him, Kowalski called. "We should meet. Same place, 2 p.m. He slid a thick folder across the table. Photographs. Timestamps. Thomas with a younger woman, mid-20s, professionally dressed. 3 different restaurants. 2 hotels. His hand on her lower back. Her name, Melissa Patterson, a junior analyst at his firm. Based on patterns, Kowalski estimated about 6 months. He produced another set of documents. Personal loans under Thomas's name. Approximately $75,000 borrowed in the past year across multiple lenders. Credit cards maxed. Combined with the mortgage and vehicle loans, family debt totaled roughly $420,000. "Does Rebecca know?" I asked. "Nothing in the joint accounts reflects this," Kowalski said. "He's managing payments separately. He's supporting 2 lifestyles. The math doesn't work long term." I paid Kowalski the remaining balance and drove home with the folder on the passenger seat. I wanted first-hand confirmation. 2 days later, I sat at a restaurant bar he'd documented. I ordered coffee and sat with a mirror view of the dining room. Thomas arrived with Melissa at 12:15. Wine ordered without a thought for price. His hand on her lower back. I took pictures discreetly. One image caught his wedding ring while his fingers intertwined with hers across the tablecloth. The wine bill showed $120 a bottle. That evening I spread everything across my desk. Reports, photographs, financial data, timeline. Affair began 6 months ago. Ted accelerated 4 months ago. Mercedes purchased 1 month ago. The pattern was mathematical. I researched Thornhill Capital Management. They specialized in portfolio management for high net worth individuals. Minimum investment $10 million. An idea formed. What if a new client wanted to transfer a substantial portfolio? What if that client insisted on dealing directly with senior management for discretion? What if that client was me? I drafted an email to Gregory Thornhill, founding partner. Professional tone. Discretion emphasized. No mention of Thomas. No hint of family connection. I called Rebecca briefly that night. Her voice sounded distant. "Fine, Dad. Busy with the kids." "You seem stressed." "Everything's fine." She hung up. I sent the message the next morning. Thornhill replied personally at 2:43 p.m. Yes, they handled portfolios of that magnitude. He offered a private consultation. I waited 2 hours before replying. I didn't seem too eager. He responded within 30 minutes, tomorrow afternoon, private office meeting. Bring ID for paperwork, I prepared. Bank draft for $2 million made out to Thornhill Capital. Remaining funds to follow. Business casual clothing. Leather portfolio. Everything deliberate. On Thursday, I walked into Thornhill's office on the 23rd floor. The city spread below in glass and steel. I sat in leather chairs as Thornhill described his services. I interrupted. "Mr. Thornhill, I've done my research. I'm prepared to transfer $2 million today as an initial deposit. The remaining $13 million within 30 days with conditions." He raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening. First condition, complete discretion. No staff involvement until the transfer is finished. Second condition, finalization to be done personally during normal business hours with no prior notice to staff." He hesitated. Then he nodded. The work began. We spent 40 minutes on paperwork. He learned my name. We talked briefly about Thomas. "Mr. Patterson is one of our investment advisors," he said, carefully neutral. "We don't discuss business with family." I left with the contract signed and the deposit secured. Thornhill promised to call 48 hours before finalization. 4 weeks. Time enough for everything to play out. The phone rang at 10:12 a.m. on a Thursday. Thornhill. "Mr. Morrison, your account transfer is complete. When would you like to finalize paperwork?" "I'll be there within the hour," I said. I dressed for the part I planned to play. A decent watch replaced with a cheap digital, old jeans, faded work jacket, scuffed boots. The perfect image of the modest retiree. Exactly what Thomas expected. I parked the Subaru prominently near the building entrance. Through the glass walls I spotted Thomas mid-conversation with clients. He saw me, a double take, confusion, irritation, embarrassment. I entered the elevator, pressed 23 and walked past Thornhill's office toward the glass-walled conference room. Thornhill greeted me. He spread the documents across the table. $15 million portfolio transfer. If you'll review and sign here. Thomas's face drained of color. The floor hushed. Conversations quieted. You don't have 15 million. You live in a one-bedroom apartment. You drive a Subaru. His voice was strangled. I do live in a one-bedroom apartment, I said calmly. And I do drive a Subaru. Neither of those facts has anything to do with my net worth. Thornhill watched the exchange and remained neutral. Professional. Thomas sputtered. This is impossible. You worked at a mill. I sold it 18 months ago for 31 million, I said quietly. The office went silent. Thomas looked smaller. Robert, we should talk, he pleaded. Families should discuss these things. The children need winter coats, I said. Rebecca needs a husband who doesn't spend $95,000 on a car while his daughter's shoes have holes. Those would be more useful than your financial advice. I signed the final document. Thornhill gathered the papers. He stood and extended his hand. Welcome to Thornhill Capital, Mr. Morrison. We'll schedule your first quarterly review for March. We shook. Then Thornhill turned to Thomas. My office now. HR would contact him about his termination. The elevator doors closed on Thomas's stricken face. I sat in the Subaru for 3 minutes, the rain streaking down, the engine off, the moment settling in. Then I drove to Rebecca's house. Rebecca opened the door, confused. Dad, what are you doing here? We need to talk, I said. Can I come in? She stepped aside. I sat at the kitchen table and turned my phone toward her. The first photograph showed Thomas and Melissa at dinner, his hand covering hers. She stared, I swiped. Hotel entrance. Another restaurant. She watched each image, her face going very still. How long? She whispered. About 6 months, I said. I hired an investigator. You spied on my husband, she said. I documented his behavior, I replied. There's a difference. I laid out the financial documents. Personal loans. Maxed cards. Hidden debt. $75,000 in personal loans. Total family debt roughly $420,000. She stared at the numbers, then looked at me like she was seeing a stranger. What did you do? She asked. I transferred $15 million to Thornhill Capital and finalized the paperwork in front of his office. He was fired. Her head snapped up. You what? I didn't get him fired, I said. His behavior did that. I simply stopped pretending to be what he thought I was. She paced. This is too much. I can't process this. The front door opened. Thomas came in, face flushed, tie loosened, a cardboard box in his hands. He froze when he saw me. You, he said, voice shaking. You destroyed my career. No, I said calmly. You destroyed your career. I provided the setting. He turned to Rebecca. Did he tell you? Did he tell you what he did? She looked at him and then at me. He showed me the photographs. Get out, she said. This is my house. Our house. Leave now. Thomas grabbed his keys and left. The Mercedes roared away. Rebecca collapsed into a chair and put her face in her hands. I sat beside her and put my hand on her shoulder. You and the children will be okay, I promised. I'll help you rebuild. She looked up with tears streaming. How? She asked. Because you're stronger than you think and because I'm here to support you. 6 weeks later, I sat in the Milton family courtroom. Rebecca at the plaintiff's table with her lawyer. Thomas in a borrowed suit, beside a court-appointed representative. The evidence was overwhelming. Adultery, financial deception, hidden debt. The judge reviewed the documents and granted primary custody to Rebecca. Child support and the marital home awarded to the petitioner. Thomas's undisclosed debts remained his responsibility. The gavel fell. Rebecca stood in the sunlight for the first time in months and smiled. It's over, she said. The legal part is. The rest takes time. 3 months later, I sat at Rebecca's kitchen table helping Jacob with homework. Emma worked on a science project nearby. The house felt lighter. Rebecca had rearranged furniture and painted the walls. She had a job at an environmental consulting firm, building the career she'd set aside. The children wore new coats and proper boots. They were different, less tense, more like children again. That evening, Rebecca and I sat with tea. She asked the question I'd expected. "Dad, did you ever worry you went too far?" I answered honestly. "Yes, sometimes I wonder if I could have done it with more grace. But he was humiliating you privately every day. Sometimes consequences need to be public to be effective." She smiled, thinking of my mother. She would have been proud, she said. We both laughed. It was the first real laugh I had heard from her in months. Later, driving back to Burlington, I thought about the past months. Investigation, exposure, the divorce, the rebuilding. Had I crossed a line between justice and revenge? Maybe. But my intention had been protection. The method had been exposure. I could live with that. Back at my apartment, I checked my accounts. Tens of millions sat there, growing with investments. Money wasn't the point. It was a tool. I opened a new document, Education Trust Fund, Jacob and Emma Harrison. I started researching trust structures and tax implications. I planned for their future. Before bed, my phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. "Thank you for not giving up." "I love you, Dad." I typed back, "I love you too, sweetheart." Always set the phone down. I smiled in the dark. Justice served. Family restored. Future secured. Task complete.